Hey everyone. Hope your week is off to a good start. Happy Sunday. Um, Hopefully this weather warms up a little bit and we can maybe get outside a little bit, but I'm going a little stir crazy. And Hannah and I love each other. We have a great marriage, but she is probably had her fill of me at this point. Um, you know, Yesterday she was so mad. She said, "AJ, you have to stop impersonating a flamingo." And I just had to put my foot down. That's a joke, guys. We're doing good. Hope you guys are being patient with your family. Hope you guys are loving one another. Maybe doing some spring cleaning. That's what Hannah and I did yesterday. Our house is super clean because that's all we have to do. But hope y'all are doing well. Miss you guys like crazy. But I'm really excited about where we are in our Bible study right now. We're headed into John chapter 14. John chapter 14 is my favorite chapter of the entire Bible. It is something I've looked forward to since we started this study of the life of Christ almost exactly a year ago today. And I've been biting at the bit to get to John chapter 14. I love John chapter 14. I think it's one of the it's just comforting. It's encouraging. It's challenging. It's a great chapter of the Bible. And I think I've told you guys this before, but while I was in college, I was so challenged by this particular chapter of the Bible that I read it every day for a month and would read it before when I woke up and when I went to bed. If you've never done that with a piece of scripture before, I really encourage you to start here. Start with John chapter 14. It is just packed full of truth and encouragement. And it makes sense that it is. If you think about where we are, we're in the upper room, and Jesus has washed the disciples' feet. He's pointed out that Judas is the one that's going to betray him, and he has sent him off to do that. He's predicted that Peter's going to deny him. He knows what's going on. Like, he's headed to the cross. He is going to be denied this night. And he's with his friends now. He's with his closest friends. And if you look at John chapter 13, verse 1, or 38, it says, Jesus answered him, "Wilt thou lay thy life for my sake? Verily, verily, I say unto thee, the cock shall not crow till thou hast denied me thrice." And then he immediately goes into John chapter 14. It's interesting that Jesus says, "You're going to betray me, Peter." But then he goes into this long discourse of just truth and to encourage his friends. He's with his friends. Judas is gone. And this is what he says to them before he is sent up to be ultimately crucified. And so with that, we're going to take some time to go through this passage. We're going to look at it in some pretty small chunks because, like I said, there's just so much here. I'm really disappointed that I don't get to sit down and actually discuss some of the things that are going on here. But with that, let's read John chapter 14, verses 1, 2, and 3 to start our study in this area. Jesus says, "Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also." 3 short verses here, but we get some great truths from Christ and his teachings here. The first thing that we see is Christ's promise. Christ gives a great promise here. He says, "You believe in Christ, or you believe in God, believe also in me." And he gives us this promise of heaven that that we know that when we die as Christians, we know that we'll get to spend eternity with Christ. We know we have that promise. It's a great promise. Whenever I think about heaven for a Christian and our perspective on it, it reminds me of several years ago when I was in college. The way that they would have the college students watch the Super Bowl every year is they would still have us go to Sunday night service. Here's the thing: you should go to church even during the Super Bowl. Go to Sunday night service, but after after the evening service, they would have all the college students go over, and we would watch the Super Bowl together. And they would have a huge Super Bowl party. It was a great time. But I remember one particular year, I can't remember exactly what happened, but somehow I found out the score. And I was like, okay, I know the score, I know who's going to win, but I still watch the game. And normally I'm pretty animated when I watch sports. I get excited, especially if I really want one team to win. I'll get really passionate. I'll be like, come on, come on, come on. And I'll get upset about calls. And, I enjoy watching sports. But this year I kind of just sat there and I just watched it. I just watched the Super Bowl and ate my buffalo wings. And, it was fun. I enjoyed watching other people get excited about it, but I wasn't going to get worked up because I knew what the end of the game was. I knew what the final score was going to be. Similarly, as Christians, we know where this is ending. The worst case scenario for a Christian, someone who's trusted in Christ, is that we're going to go to heaven. That's a promise that we have. The worst case scenario is that we're going to inherit this mansion that Christ is going to talk about, or talks about here, is that we're going to inherit a place that Christ has prepared for us. So this is the second thing that we see. We have Christ's promise of heaven, but we also see Christ's preparation for heaven. If you read Genesis 1, it tells us that God created everything we've ever seen, all of creation, in just 6 short days. He rested on the 7th. So in 6 days, Christ created everything. The mountains, the beaches, the sun, the stars. He created everything. He created you, he created me, all in that 6 days. Now, if you look at this verse, though, in verse 2, in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. Christ is preparing a place for you presently. Right now, Christ is preparing heaven for you and for me. It's interesting that he created everything we've ever seen in just 6 days, but he spent the last 2,000 years working and preparing heaven. What an amazing... I can't comprehend how amazing heaven is going to be. That's just a great truth. And you have a place in heaven. It says here, I go to prepare a place for you after talking about these mansions. It's interesting, that word place is the Greek word topos. Topos means a specific place of a limited capacity, meaning there's like a building in heaven on the street of gold with your address and your name on the mailbox. This place was prepared for you. It's your house in heaven. That's a great, that just boggles my mind. That Christ is like preparing this place for you. I remember whenever we first moved here, I don't know if you guys remember, I came here at the beginning of June. But Hannah wasn't able to come until 2 weeks later. Remember, she had to stay in California. And so I got to move into our apartment, and I had all of our stuff there, and I put everything in our kitchen everything in our house where I thought it should be. And then it took like 2-3 days of me getting furniture set up and getting the bed made and getting everything was ready. The entire house was set up. It wasn't decorated. I remember being really sad because I didn't have any decorations up on the wall, but I figured that was something for Hannah to do. But I prepared our house for her. And then I sat there and I was like, what do I do now? Our house is ready. I have my house, but where's my wife? I need my wife here. And then I was waiting for her to come. I was so excited. Remember, I flew to California, picked her up, we drove back, and then I got to show her our house. I got to say, look at this house we have. It's awesome. Now, that was an apartment. And our apartment, if you've been there, isn't huge. But Christ has prepared a mansion for you and for me. There's a mansion right now, and he's like, I can't wait for AJ to get to heaven so I can show him this awesome house I prepared for him. That boggles my mind. That's an amazing thing. That's going on right now. Similarly, he's doing the same thing for you and for every other Christian. He's preparing a house for you, and he's like, I can't wait for them to get here. That's awesome. I'm sure that God's eternality and some of those things are a little different. But that's what he says here. He's gone to prepare a place for us. Isn't that cool? So we see Christ's promise of heaven. We see Christ's preparation of heaven. But the most important thing about heaven is Christ's presence. When we talk about heaven, a lot of times we think about our loved ones who will be there. I think of my friends. There's people in heaven right now that I am excited to see. There are people in heaven right now that I cannot wait to hug their neck. And I think about the fact that there's going to be streets of gold. I think about the heavenly choir. I think about my mansion, the house that Christ has prepared for me. I think about the crown that I'm going to be rewarded for my acts of service here on earth. I think about all these things and how great heaven must be, and it boggles my mind to comprehend heaven. But you know, the greatest thing about heaven is that Jesus is there. Right now, Jesus is in heaven. And when we get to heaven, we're going to be in his presence. Physically, we'll be able to walk and talk and see him. And I can't comprehend how great that day will be. As the child song go, heaven is a wonderful place. But the thing that makes it most wonderful is that Christ will be there. You know, the thing that makes heaven so wonderful is that Christ is there and that we get to spend eternity with him. It's the same thing that makes hell so terrible. You know, we think of hell, we think of the fire and the brimstone and Satan and all the terrible thing, the darkness and the burning and all the terrible things of hell. But the thing that makes hell so bad, the worst thing about hell, is that God isn't there. That there is no essence of God anywhere there. It is eternal separation from God. You know, as Christians, as we look at this world, we know how the game ends. We know that people are going to end up in one of two places. Do we take that seriously? Do we live in a way that we know that we're going to have a mansion and that we're living for the Lord? Do we live with that reality each and every day? And do we live with the reality that maybe we're surrounded by people who don't know where they're going to spend eternity? That won't be in the presence of Christ. You know, we have a great responsibility to share that truth with people. You know, people are looking for hope right now. Share that hope with them. Tell them that they can know Christ, that they can know the end of the game, and that it's a wonderful place for those who choose to accept Christ and accept his love. Guys, I hope this is an encouragement to you. I love you. Can't wait to see you. And until we meet again, see you later.